click on that sign up login, I'm already signed up, obviously, so I can just log in. You would actually do this sign up button when it actually appears. So you do the sign up, you put in the email on which we've invited you to this meeting. So that is your account email that we've used. So use this email address, and then you give yourself a password, and then you're in the system basically. And when you do log in, this is the sort of thing that you will see. It will jump immediately to what we call the orders page. So you can see there's a little menu on the left here. Some of these impersonation statistics users, that's kind of admin for me. But you will see new order, orders, and customers. So the first thing you'll see is the orders, and no surprise, this is where you see your order history. And as I say, this goes back to the first order that you will have ever placed with Pocklington. So the database actually goes back to 1997. So if you've been sending orders or samples to the lab since 1997, then you'll see the data in here. So yeah, a long history in there. How we see this page then. So one is just keeping track of current orders. So it's ordered. The table is ordered with the most recent order at the top and the oldest down at the bottom. So you can see we've got current orders, some of them in different states. So we've got, I won't go into too much details, but we've got different status of orders. Some are in draft, so that the order hasn't been sent to the lab. The customer is still kind of working on that order, maybe amending certain things. It's something that maybe built an order before they've gone sampling, and then they're going to adapt a little bit if the fields have changed or the crop is changing before they actually send the information to the lab. And then we've got an in-transit status. So you've sent the data to us, you've put the samples in the post as per normal. The samples haven't arrived at the lab yet, but that's basically telling the data is being transferred to the lab. We've got done, so that the whole analysis process is finished. I'm not sure if we have it on here, but we have in the lab status. So when the samples arrive and they get logged into the laboratory, that status becomes in the laboratory. They're basically being analysed, and okay, we're just waiting for the results to come back out again. And then the other thing you can do in here, so this is kind of monitoring, recent orders. But the other thing you can do in here is, you can look by customer, for example, and you can bring up the history of analysis that you've done with that customer. As I say, this is a dummy account. We've just kind of set up some pretend data. But if pottage had been sampled, back into the 2000s, you would see those results within here. So you can kind of search this order history. And then with that history, you can then do things like, let me choose one. I shall choose that one. So if you click on that individual order, you can basically see the results of that historical analysis, field by field, in the portal here. And as you can imagine, it's a similar process to or a similar theme to the reports, where you've got this low, normal, high, and you can see where your results sit versus those guidelines, and then you've got the comments on here. You can actually from here as well do things like download that PDF report for yourself. So you can bring out that, the report that you normally get from the lab. So you can kind of download those historical reports. You can also do things like change the crop. So if you sampled this field a couple of years ago and you now want to use the same analysis to generate some new recommendations for a new crop, within that kind of 5-year, 4-year sampling cycle that you might have. So to use that data again, you can say, okay, this year it's oilseed rape, and it will change the comments and change the recommendations if you've got them in there. So you can start to interact with your historical orders. And we know in the past that was less easy. Some of you may have used Yarra for that, but it wasn't really easy for you to access this historical data, and it probably relied on you either contacting the lab and asking for reports to be resent, or saving these reports somehow in your own system on email or in different folders or whatever to be able to then re-access them. So now the data is available in there, and you can download it, as I say, in that PDF form, or you can bring it down in CSV, Excel, etc. Or you can download the whole order in the same way, or sample by sample. Again, very quick kind of overview of that. So we're not here really to talk too much in detail today, but if you want a kind of more detailed walkthrough, then please, make that one-to-one appointment, and somebody will spend a lot more time walking through. And in that case, they can probably actually link to your account, so you can actually look at kind of real-world examples as well together. Okay, so this is the orders. We've also built for now a kind of facsimile of the paper order form on which you can place orders. So as I said, when you log in, you will get access to your account within Megalab. And because you're logged in on that account, we will also have some of your historical, or well, all of your historical customer information. So you will be able to place orders on that account. Now, we also have the wherewithal to link you to multiple accounts if that's something that you want to do. So if you were, say, an agronomist who wanted to place orders on your own agronomy account, but maybe also a trials account or a group account or whatever it might be, we can do that. Or we could also give agronomists who are working perhaps in a region, in a group, we can give a group of agronomists access to each other's accounts. So you can view orders that have been placed by a colleague, and you could even place orders on their account, perhaps if they were on holiday or, there was some reason that you wanted to do that. So that's kind of, just to mention, that's kind of multiple flexibility, if you like, in the background, that we can give this kind of multiple read and write account access. Perhaps for some of the bigger groups of agronomists that are working together, that's quite useful. But then depending on the account that you're pointing towards, you can then place an order using click downs essentially, and it should be fairly intuitive. You can probably see the kind of information that you would want to give to us as the lab, and we want to receive in order to do the analysis. And it's very much like the paper order form. One of the benefits here is that you can use an existing customer that's already in the system, and because you've chosen that customer, you will have existing fields that are already in the system. So some of the work is done for you, if you like, and placing an order on the same field has value also in terms of putting that data in the same place in the database, so that you can start to link data together, soil and leaf and grain, or just multiple soil samples, whatever it might be. So that idea of a kind of a fixed field, if you like, is quite useful. Different types of soil samples you can send. You can give us, some companies give us a purchase order number or a customer identifier, often for their own internal invoicing. You can do that there. You can do a date sample if you want to do a date sample, maybe more relevant for a leaf sample perhaps. And then you're just filling in line by line, and there's kind of shortcuts and kind of quicker ways to do this, but essentially the bits of information that we want to know: a field name, a crop. You can do a plot reference. So if you're doing zones in a field, well, either plots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 within a field, if you're doing kind of GPS type sampling. Or actually, we recommend, if you're doing something that we quite often see where you have a poor area and a good area of a field, do that by using the plot reference rather than the field, because then you're not polluting the field name. In the past, we've had bull, good, and in our system that goes as 2 separate fields. So use that plot reference for that example, and then tell us the analysis you want. And we've got the concept here of favorites. So this is the analysis that you most commonly use, linked to your own account. Someone's just arrived in the lobby a bit late, but we'll let them in. So you choose analysis, and you'll recognise the image, maybe just a basic analysis, and then you've got scope to choose, an extra analysis that you want to add to that. And then there's a place in here where, if you're missing something here, then you can add some instructions for the lab, and they'll pick up, do something different with this sample. There's also the wherewithal to amalgamate samples in here if you're into amalgamation. And then you just, you can copy down, you can change the crop, you can change the field, you can delete samples out. Yeah, so you can basically build an order form fairly easily. Three samples maybe. Now the next bit, the bit that's critical to understand is this is obviously designed to be a paperless system. So we're not expecting any order forms now. We're not expecting anything written for sure. We're not really expecting anything printed. So in order for that to work, we need a unique sample identifier to be able to log that in and match the samples when they arrive. So you'll have noticed now that the sample number looks a bit different to how it appears on the old E numbers on the order forms, or some of you have different numbers, but the old E number becomes this unique identifier now. And that's made up of a 4-character unique code that is unique for you as a customer. So I am Yara 3, and I will always be YAR3 for all the orders that I'm placing through the portal. And then this means that this is the 19th order that I've placed digitally, and that number will just increase incrementally as you place more orders. And -1 is the first sample in that order. So that becomes the unique identifier for this sample and within this order. And actually, that is the thing that we now need. This is critical, really. That is the thing that we now need written on the bags. So if you imagine, you've fulfilled this order, you've gone to the farm, you've taken the samples, whilst you're sampling, maybe you've written All Fathers Go, you've written the field reference on the bag, you could still do that, that's no problem. But then when you're actually logging the order in, either before you go to the field, you might pre-write the bags, or after you've come back to the car or the office or wherever, you're kind of filling out the order. That's the bit that we want writing on the bag, because then when the samples arrive, it's that identifier that Sarah and the others in the front office will type into the system, and it will bring up your order details. They'll be able to say, okay, arrived, and the data is transferred then into the live system, and the sample starts to get processed. So you'll understand, without that identifier, if we've just got a farm name and a field name, we don't really know where that's come from. We don't know which account it's in. Hopefully that makes sense. So you've got the order. The next steps actually tell you these things that I've just said. So it gives you a chance to review here. It's saying, please add the sample number to the bag. So add that sample number to the relevant bag. We actually put in place a print summary. So if you are in the office and you like kind of being super secure, belt and braces, then you can actually print an order summary, and you can put that in with the samples in with the bag. But more often you're in the field, you don't have the wherewithal to print. So essentially all you need to do is make sure the sample number's on the bag, and then post them in the normal way. Just put them in the prepaid envelope, drop them in the post, and then when they arrive, we will receive that sample number, or we'll be able to use that sample number to bring them into the lab. There's a few nuances, and there's a few kind of shortcuts and things with placing orders. So I would suggest, if you are starting this for the first time and you just want to kind of talk through or walk through placing an order, use that kind of direct contact, and you'll be able to speak to somebody one-to-one, and they will help you kind of through the process if you're having any trouble. But I think it's all, it replaces a bit the paper order form, and it's all pretty intuitive once you get going on it. I won't place an order yet, actually. So that's placing orders. And those are the two things that I didn't really want to spend a lot of time on, having spent 20 minutes on them, but we can go deeper. So the newer bit then that we're kind of quite excited to release is what I always think of as the other end of the process. So this is really getting samples into the system and maybe being a bit more efficient on, getting the right field name, the customer details would be correct on the report, and all this kind of stuff. Getting the samples in the right place in the database so they can all be linked up in future. But what are we going to do with the data? So what interesting things can we then do? So if you go now to this customers section, for most of you, this would be a list of farm, I suppose, a list of farmers with which or on whose farms you have sampled in the past. And some of them would be, repeat customers, that you're sampling year on year, and some may be, just one-offs. And again, this would show every customer that you've ever sampled. So if you've been sampling since the early 2000s or whatever, you would see all those farms on this customer list. Now, I'll come back a bit later. We'll talk a little bit about, I'll talk a bit about amalgamation later, I think, if we get the chance. But on this list, you can then start to dive a bit deeper and look at kind of a farm history and current status as well. You can start to kind of visualize and interact with the latest results on that farm. Now, again, I really need to emphasize here that this is, particularly this part of the system, is MVP. So it's kind of the minimal functionality to kind of make it work without us spending a lot of time and effort building something that perhaps doesn't really have a value. So this is the bit that we're really starting to interact with customers to kind of get that input as to, okay, we would really like from here to be able to, generate a crop nutrition plan or provide a report to the farmer that has this map view printed out, or invite a customer with an email to see their own results in here, that kind of functionality. But we need to understand, the real pull from the customers before we start doing that. So I'll show you the minimal things in here. You'll see immediately we've got a map view. So we've set up a dummy farm and it's got fields mapped. And because we have analysis associated with these fields, we can start to see the results on the map. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice as well is that letterbox view of the map isn't very convenient. You can't see all the field names, for example. The map's really difficult to see. So we have a simple click here where you can then zoom to the full screen. And we're following exactly the same pattern as we do on the reports. We've got this kind of almost a traffic light system where you've got the red and the green, and in this case we've got blue as high, actually, as a better differentiation. But anything red is below guideline, anything green is within guideline, anything blue is high, above the guideline. So what you're looking at really is that anything reddish, particularly the red are the worst, if you like, compared to guidelines, needs some attention. And what we're looking at here is the pH results across these fields. So you can see anything red is below the ideal pH and probably needs some attention. So you can start to fairly quickly identify, okay, which fields do we need to be thinking about liming in this case. On the bottom here, you do have at the moment a limited number of other parameters that you can look at, and these are only relating to soil analysis at the moment. So we can look at, and again, these are made up results, if you like, but again, phosphorus, we can see lots of high results for phosphorus and a couple of fields where the phosphorus is low and a couple of fields where the phosphorus is normal. So again, which fields are we focusing on? Okay, so top and fathers particularly probably need a phosphorus recommendation building. And I think at the moment that's kind of the user case, if you like, is okay, which fields do I need to pay attention and where do we need to prioritize, and which fields do we not need to think about too much at this stage. So you're looking at different parameters here. In theory, and in fact in practice, I think in later, anything that you have measured with a field reference, so really anything that you've measured from a soil point of view, organic matter, carbon, active carbon, CEC, texture, anything that we have measured for you and is in the lab analysis, you will be able to view on this map, boron, copper, anything. And we're working towards that, so you will have basically more options on your drop down here. And then also we want to introduce probably tissue analysis, maybe grain analysis as well, where you can view that on the map as well. tissue analysis in particular, show me the zinc deficiency across the fields where I've done tissue analysis. But at the moment, you've got the basics, and you saw that as you hover over, you actually get the individual results from each field as well, so you can start to kind of see the actual measurements. Again, you're probably already thinking, well, from there it would be really nice to be able to click on that and, I don't know, generate a recommendation or make a comment to the farmer or download the report, or there may be multiple things that you want to do from the map, and we're kind of working on gathering that feedback, as I said. So that's the map view as it stands at the moment, and then below that we've got what we've imaginatively called the table view, because that's what it is. And this represents the latest analysis field by field on the farm. So if you have sampled a field over maybe 2-3 occasions over the history of your analysis, you would only see the latest sample in this particular view. But what it does do is give you this table of, again, results, but also an indication of where that result sits against a guideline using that kind of red, green, blue system here. So high, low through normal to high. And at the moment in here, the thing that you can do is you can order those samples by result. So show me the fields based on the phosphorus from the lowest to the highest. And again, you can start to kind of identify, okay, where do we see we need some action, and maybe where do we need multiple action, because we can see, compared to indexes, things are pretty low. Indexes will appear in here soon as well, actually, on the PK and MAG. So you can start to kind of interact with the table a little bit and show me the fields that have the lowest manganese level across the farm, or copper, or anything that you've measured. I think on this table we've actually got solvitas, so we've got a wide array of information. Actually, you can even look at show me by the soil health score, the lowest to highest, show me by the organic carbon tons per hectare, all sorts of different measurements that you can start to play with. As I keep on repeating, you can probably think, there's great to do other things with this now, but yeah, that's the next bit we're working on. So that's the kind of latest analysis. You'll see as well below each field reference, there's actually a number of orders. And for some of those fields where you've got multiple orders, we can go a bit deeper. So if we pick on Bull Field in this case, this is actually then the field history. So this is showing you that there's been multiple soil samplings over a number of years, the last 10 years in this case or so. And it's showing you on the chart the results of each of those analyses compared to the guideline levels. So again, minimal functionality. We've got the basics, pH, PK, MAG on here, and you can switch them on and off if you like. But this is basically saying that in this field, the pH started around about the normal range last time it was measured, or the last couple of times, the pH has actually been dipping. So this gives the idea of being able to follow a field history and maybe measure or see the response to certain actions. So, we've measured pH here, we did something about it, actually the pH rose, but then in the next couple of samples it's dropping again, so we need to do something again at this point. So you start bringing this idea of being able to follow the field history and monitor the response to certain actions. And again, this is that basic functionality. So there's no reason why this couldn't be for your soil health score or organic matter that you're monitoring, or anything that you've measured at the lab. And again, soil analysis, but there's no reason why this couldn't be leaf analysis over a single season. Maybe you've done multiple samplings, different things that you could look at. So that's kind of bringing in this idea of trends, historical trends on the field, and being able to kind of bring the data to monitor, but also perhaps show response to to action within the field. And below that, we then actually got sample history, so you can go into individual results, and you can do the same as you would do in the orders, where you can actually look at a single sample in here, and it will bring you back to that page where you can do things like you can change the crop and do different things with that. Okay, within here as well, actually, you can also change the crop, and that would generate new interpretations, of course. One last thing to touch on. So this is probably a job for you, and partly why we're presenting now, because this to me is either a kind of summer job, if you've got a couple of hours to spare over the coming months, or maybe a winter job if winter's probably a bit more of a quieter time. But what you will see for sure when you log into your own account is you will see, especially if you've got any length of history of using the lab, you will see quite a bit of duplication within the system. So when we've received samples on the old paper order forms, this is probably a good example. If we've got a farmer at one point that has been named Telfer, and then a few years later, or maybe even the same year, we get an order form, and on that form it says John Telfer Limited. Maybe the farm's changed its name, or when you've written the form, sometimes they're more complete than other times if you're in a rush, or if something else is on your mind, perhaps. But when we enter them in the lab, we don't really know if that's the same farmer. So in the system, they will have been registered as different farms over the years. And it could also be just spelling mistakes that have been registered as different farms. Now, what that means, I think you'll understand the implication of that, because if you want to kind of link data historically on a field, and that data is sitting in two different farms, then that link is broken. So what we've given to try and allow you to kind of bring that history back into line is this ability to combine those farms, and we've called it merge customers. So if you look at your list and okay, those are the same farm, I know they're the same farm, but they're separated at the moment, you can simply do this merge customer, where you choose and you say, okay, those two are definitely the same. I'm going to keep that one as the master. That doesn't matter too much because you can edit the details anyway later, but keep one as the kind of overwrite. And then if you merge those customers, that will actually bring those two farms together, rename the farm as John Telfer Limited, but more importantly, bring all those fields and all that data into the right place. Eventually, if it does, I'm at home today, so there we go. So we've now got John Telfer Limited, and we've got those 29 and 4 fields all linked into the same place. You could then go in here, so you've got the customer details. If you want to edit that and add more details in there, you can do that at the time. But importantly, what you've got is all those fields referenced under there. So one thing is merging the customers, and that's, as you can see, it's not particularly a difficult job, but it's one that we've had to give to the user really, because we can't tell from your farm list which ones are the same, and it would be a bit presumptuous of us to kind of think those are the same, so let's merge them, because they may well not be. The other thing to mention is that this is reversible, so we keep a record of that merge. And if you were to say, actually, that John Telfer, I've made a mistake, and it should actually be two different people, then we can go back to the original state. We can wind it back if you contact us. Now, the other thing you'll see is when you then go into, so let's go into that merged one, makes more sense. So if we go into a merged farm, you may then also have a similar problem for fields. So we haven't named these fields particularly imaginatively, but if you've got a kind of 19A and a 19B or a 240 or whatever references, you may decide, well, actually those two fields are the same, and the fields will have samples associated with them or orders associated with them. And again, they will be kind of delinked in the background, so you won't be able to get that benefit of looking at a historical trend. So we've also given the same thing that we have for farm for the field. So you can choose 2 fields and you can say, I know those 2 field names are the same and I can merge them. And then you can actually, at that point, rename that field and give it, so field 19A, we'll just call it field 19 in this case. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Again, the bits I'm skimming over fairly quickly, please reach out and make that appointment, and we can go into a bit more detail when it comes to actually doing this task potentially in the future. You'll have forgotten everything that I said, so there's the wherewithal to link into the customer support. Now the other thing that you'll have seen is some of these fields have field boundaries drawn against them. And again, if you want this functionality of being able to use the map, then obviously you need to map the field in the system. You need to draw where that field is for us. And there's kind of 3 ways to do it. One is that you actually go into the field and then you can edit, and then you can find on the map a certain location. That's the laboratory in Pocklington, but you can basically either edit that or you can draw a field for yourself. Another way to do it is to use, if you have the wherewithal, shape files. So if you have shape files from different systems or the RPA or different places where shape files exist, you can use them just to bulk import field boundaries. To import fields, you just bring in a shape file, and if you were to save those fields, that will just bring those fields under this farm. So you have all the fields now registered, if you like, under this farm, but there's no analysis linked to those fields at the moment. So the benefit is that you've brought in the whole farm in one operation. Even if there isn't some analysis on particular fields, you've got the farm mapped. Once you've done it once, you don't have to do it again. So that's kind of an easy way to do things. And then you would use, if you're still with me, you would use the merge field functionality to then link any analysis that you have in here. So you would merge a field that had analysis with a field that you've imported to kind of do that analysis link with the field boundary. And the other bit that I was going to show you that didn't seem to be working, let's try again, is if we bring in a field boundary, but we attach, in this case, so we bring in the files. Now that's broken for some reason. Yeah, I'm not sure where that link's gone, but normally what happens there is you see the field boundaries again, but you also, in this box, you see a list of the analyses that you've done, and you can just link kind of live this field boundary with this field and sample in the system, and kind of link the fields on the fly, if you like. So the benefit of that is that you get the field boundary linked to the analysis in one action, in a way. But the downside is that you don't have all the fields on the farm there, because it only imports the fields in which you've done some analysis, so you can't see the blank spots, or you can't see, or next time you bring in an analysis, you probably have to redraw a field boundary. Again, more details available if you kind of reach out and set that appointment.